Welcome to Power in Words, a sanctuary for your mind and a still refuge for your spirit. In a world that often demands absolute perfection and relentless speed, this space is dedicated to the profound truth of our shared human experience. We are here to cultivate genuine inspiration, to unearth the deep strength that already resides within you, and to surround you with the kind of positive energy that heals rather than pressures. This channel is not about empty motivation that fades the moment a video ends. It is about emotional understanding, self-compassion, and the gentle, deliberate awakening of your inner resilience. We are walking this path together as friends sharing a quiet, honest conversation about the beautiful, difficult, and transformative journey of being alive. I am deeply grateful you have chosen to spend this time here, bringing your unique presence to our shared space. There is a subtle illusion woven deeply into the fabric of modern life, a subtle deception that continuously suggests our existence should be a seamless progression of comfort, visible success, and uninterrupted happiness. We are implicitly taught from a very young age that if we are struggling, if we are in deep pain, or if we feel profoundly lost, something has gone fundamentally wrong with us as individuals. We look around and consume carefully curated glimpses of other lives, polished and pristine digital facades, and we instinctively retreat into our own silent shadows. We become convinced that we are the only ones carrying an overwhelmingly heavy burden, entirely isolated in our feelings of inadequacy. But the reality of the human condition is infinitely more complex, much messier, and far more demanding than the images we see on our screens. The truth, stripped of all comfortable pretenses and societal expectations, is that adversity is not a strange anomaly in life. It is the very fertile soil from which our deepest, most authentic character is forced to grow. The renowned endurance athlete David Goggins speaks a truth that resonates at the very core of our psychological architecture. He suggests that suffering is the true test of life. At first glance, this perspective might seem unnecessarily harsh, unforgiving, or uncompromising. It might immediately conjure images of extreme physical exhaustion, brutal environmental conditions, or relentless, punishing physical discipline. But when we look closer through the lens of psychological understanding and deep human empathy, we realize that this concept of suffering is not fundamentally about physical torment. It is about the unavoidable friction of human existence. It is the profound, quiet test that meets us in the ordinary, unglamorous moments of our days, challenging us to discover who we truly are when the comforting illusions and easy escapes are permanently stripped away. Suffering takes countless forms, and most of them are entirely invisible to the outside world. It is the heavy, suffocating weight of self-doubt that pins you to your mattress in the quiet, lonely hours of the early morning. It is the sharp, lingering ache of a meaningful relationship that unraveled despite your absolute best intentions and exhausted efforts. It is the paralyzing, cold fear of failure that stops you from starting the creative project or business you have dreamed about for years. It is the quiet, complicated grief of letting go of an old identity that no longer serves you, or the solitary, exhausting struggle of trying to build a completely new life from the scattered fragments of the old one. This is the true suffering that tests us. It is the intimate, silent battlefield of the mind where our most significant victories and defeats take place without an audience. Our natural biological and psychological instinct is to run from this pain as fast as possible. We are evolutionarily wired for preservation, biologically designed to seek warmth, safety, and avoid the cold sting of danger or discomfort. When deep emotional discomfort arises, our minds frantically search for an immediate exit strategy. We distract ourselves with endless digital consumption, seeking a momentary dopamine release to numb the underlying humming anxiety. We numb our minds with frantic busy work, desperately convincing ourselves that continuous motion equals meaningful progress. We build elaborate defensive walls around our hearts, quietly telling ourselves that if we never try anything risky, we can never fail. And if we never love deeply, we can never be broken. We become the master architects of our own avoidance, carefully designing lives that are safe, predictable, and ultimately devoid of true meaning or passion. But avoidance is merely a temporary anesthetic, not a permanent cure. When we constantly flee from our internal struggles and external challenges, we slowly and methodically erode our own baseline of self-respect. The subconscious mind precisely registers every single time we back down from a difficult challenge, every time we silence our true inner voice to appease the expectations of others, and every time we choose the comfortable path of least resistance over the demanding path of personal growth. Over time, this daily accumulation of small, silent retreats creates a profound, echoing sense of emptiness within the soul. We begin to feel like complete imposters in our own lives, haunted by the quiet, terrifying realization that we are living only a tiny fraction of our true potential. The long-term psychological toll of chronic avoidance is infinitely heavier than the temporary sharp pain of directly facing our fears. To truly understand that suffering is the true test of life is to completely reframe our fundamental relationship with our own pain. It requires a monumental, courageous shift in perspective, moving deliberately from a mindset of passive victimhood to a mindset of profound personal responsibility. When sudden adversity strikes, the default human reaction is often an agonizing, desperate plea to the universe. We ask why this terrible thing is happening to us. We look frantically for external reasons, for someone or something to blame, for an acceptable excuse to simply surrender. But the true test of character begins the exact moment we stop asking why and bravely start asking what. What is this specific pain trying to teach me right now? What hidden parts of my character need to be forged in this exact fire? What incredible strength is lying dormant within me, waiting patiently for this exact crisis to be awakened and utilized? This is absolutely not a call to embrace toxic positivity. It is entirely unhelpful, invalidating, and deeply damaging to pretend that genuine pain does not hurt. When you experience a profound loss, the grief is brutally real. When you experience a significant failure, the disappointment is piercing and deeply uncomfortable. Acknowledging the absolute reality of your pain is the first necessary, non-negotiable step toward genuine healing. You must grant yourself the radical, loving permission to feel the full, messy spectrum of your human emotions without attaching judgment or shame to them. True psychological resilience does not mean suppressing your sadness or pasting a fake, rigid smile over a genuinely broken heart. It means allowing the emotional storm to pass completely through you, standing firm in the quiet knowledge that while the weather of your mind may be temporarily violent, you are the deep, unshakable sky beneath it. It is specifically in the darkest, most terrifying corridors of our minds that we often find our truest, most authentic selves. The celebrated mythologist Joseph Campbell once astutely observed that the cave you fear to enter holds the exact treasure you seek. The very things we spend our entire lives running away from are usually the exact challenges we must eventually face in order to become whole. If you are terrified of social rejection, your ultimate test is to step into the public arena and risk being fully seen in all your unprotected vulnerability. If you are constantly haunted by the fear of inadequacy, your test is to dedicate yourself to the quiet, unglamorous, daily work of incremental improvement without the immediate guarantee of external applause. The suffering we experience in these specific arenas is the necessary friction that slowly polishes the rough stone of our raw character. Let us consider the deeply human experience of failure, a concept that carries so much unnecessary cultural baggage. Society often paints failure as a terminal condition, a permanent and shameful stain on our personal record that somehow defines our ultimate worth as human beings. We are taught from a very young age to fear it so immensely that many of us subconsciously choose a life of quiet, predictable desperation over the terrifying possibility of a public stumble. We shrink our dreams to fit within the narrow borders of guaranteed success. But within the framework of the true test of life, the concept of failure is entirely redefined and completely disarmed. It is no longer a final judgment of your character. It is merely data. It is the necessary, sometimes painful, but always valuable feedback required for genuine growth. Every single time you try and fail, you are actively dismantling a false illusion about how the world works and replacing it with a concrete, actionable reality. You are shedding the fragile, restrictive skin of perfectionism, and slowly developing the thick, calloused resilience of a true survivor who understands that stumbling is just an integral part of walking forward. Building a calloused mind, a concept so central to enduring life's unavoidable trials, is fundamentally an act of profound self-compassion. This might seem deeply contradictory at first glance. We often equate personal discipline and mental endurance with cruel self-punishment or a complete lack of gentleness toward ourselves. But true, sustainable discipline is actually the highest form of self-care imaginable. It is the unwavering commitment to doing what is necessary for your long-term well-being, even when it is brutally uncomfortable in the immediate short term. When you force yourself out of a warm bed to exercise while the world is still dark, or when you sit down to do the difficult cognitive work instead of seeking a cheap digital distraction, you are sending an incredibly powerful message to your own subconscious. You are explicitly saying that your future self is worth the present discomfort. You are actively proving to yourself that you can be trusted to handle difficult things when they arise. This earned internal trust is the absolute foundation of unshakable confidence. Confidence is not a magical, mystical aura that some lucky people are born with and others simply lack forever. It is not the complete absence of fear or doubt. Genuine, lasting confidence is the quiet, internal, evidence-based knowing that you can handle whatever unpredictable circumstances life places in front of you. And this vital knowing can only be earned through the intentional, voluntary endurance of difficulty. You cannot simply think your way into deep self-confidence. You cannot meditate your way out of the fundamental necessity of taking action. You must physically and emotionally step into the crucible. Every single time you directly face a fear, endure a significant hardship, and absolutely refuse to surrender your core values, you lay down an undeniable stone in the absolute bedrock of your self-worth. The journey through suffering and personal transformation is inherently solitary. Even if you are deeply blessed to be surrounded by a loving family, a supportive partner, and wonderful friends, the internal cognitive processing of pain, the private wrestling with deep-seated doubt, and the quiet, daily decision to keep moving forward can only be done by you. There will be inevitable moments of profound, aching loneliness on this path. There will be long nights when the silence of your room feels completely deafening, and the massive gap between where you currently are and where you desperately want to be feels like an unbridgeable chasm. During these difficult, solitary hours, it is vital to remember that loneliness is often the necessary prerequisite for profound self-discovery. In the complete absence of external noise and distraction, you are finally forced to listen to the quiet, enduring, deeply honest voice of your own soul. It is deeply important to address the psychological phenomenon of the inner critic during these solitary struggles, as it is often our own mind that provides the harshest resistance. We all possess a persistent critical voice in our heads that constantly highlights our flaws, magnifies our smallest mistakes, and relentlessly predicts our inevitable ruin. This voice often becomes exponentially louder and more aggressive when we are in the midst of a difficult trial or on the verge of a significant personal breakthrough. It whispers insidiously that we are not strong enough to survive the pressure, not smart enough to figure out the complex solution, and fundamentally not worthy of experiencing success or lasting peace. The most effective psychological strategy here is absolutely not to argue with this voice or try to forcefully and violently silence it, for that only validates its presence and gives it more emotional power. The true strategy is to step back and observe it with a sense of calm, detached curiosity. Recognize that this intensely critical voice is just an echo of past conditioning, perhaps the internalized expectations of childhood or a biological protective mechanism that has simply gone completely awry in the modern world. It is a frightened part of your psyche trying to keep you safe from potential disappointment. It is a feeling, an echo, a shadow, but it is definitively not the absolute truth of who you fundamentally are. Who you truly are, beneath the turbulent surface of your anxieties and fears, is the quiet, eternal awareness that is observing the struggle itself. You are the profound, unshakable strength that continues to draw breath even when the conscious mind feels entirely submerged in panic and confusion. You are not your chaotic thoughts. You are not your overwhelming emotions. When you finally internalize this distinction, a new emotional horizon opens up. You discover that you can feel the absolute terror of an uncertain, unpredictable future and still manage to take a deliberate, courageous step forward. You can feel the heavy, suffocating ache of past regrets, the sorrow of words left unsaid and opportunities missed, and still consciously choose to build something beautiful and meaningful in the present moment. This dual capacity to hold profound emotional ache in one hand while steadying your daily life with the other is the quiet hallmark of true resilience. It is the defining trait of a spirit that has learned how to navigate the heavy, beautiful reality of being human. Finding meaning in our struggles is perhaps the most crucial element of surviving the test without becoming bitter. The brilliant psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl profoundly noted that a person who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. If your current suffering feels completely random, entirely pointless, and totally devoid of any larger meaning, it will eventually crush your spirit. But if you can attach a higher purpose to your endurance, the pain miraculously becomes transformative. Perhaps your current struggle is exactly what is preparing you to be a vital beacon of hope for someone else who will walk a very similar dark path in the future. Perhaps the deep empathy you are painfully gaining through your current heartbreak will eventually make you a much better parent, a far more compassionate leader, or a significantly deeper artist. You possess the incredible power to actively assign meaning to your own pain. This assignment of meaning is an active, ongoing, and highly creative process. It requires you to bravely look back at the scattered, shattered pieces of your past experiences and deliberately decide how you will arrange them into a beautiful, cohesive mosaic of wisdom. It involves looking directly at your emotional scars, not as shameful evidence of your fragility, but as undeniable proof of your incredible capacity for healing. There is a deeply beautiful traditional Japanese art form called kintsugi, where broken pottery is carefully repaired with lacquer mixed with powdered gold. The profound philosophy behind this specific art is that the breakage and the subsequent repair are deeply important parts of the history of the object, rather than something ugly to disguise or throw away. The repaired piece becomes infinitely more beautiful, more valuable, and more unique, precisely because it has been broken and put back together. Your psychological breaks, your emotional fractures, and your spiritual wounds are fundamentally no different from this beautiful artistic philosophy. The deep traumas you have bravely survived, the harsh rejections you have painfully endured, and the periods of dark, suffocating depression you have successfully navigated are absolutely not defects in your character or signs of fundamental weakness. On the contrary, they are the very specific, sacred places where the pure gold of your earned wisdom, deep empathy, and unyielding resilience is eventually poured. The person who has never truly been tested by adversity, who has managed to live a life of completely insulated comfort and easy victories, often lacks the profound depth of character and the rich, complex empathy that only a season of genuine suffering can cultivate. When the intense fires of your personal trials finally recede, the old version of you has been consumed. You may carry heavy scars, but those marks are not defects. They are the profound architecture of a deeper, more grounded empathy, and the quiet proof of your survival. You may carry heavy scars, but those marks are not defects. They are the profound architecture of a deeper, more grounded empathy, and the quiet proof of your survival. We must also recognize the absolute danger of comparing our own suffering to the suffering of others. In our modern era of constant digital hyperconnectivity, it is incredibly easy to look at someone else and falsely assume their journey is entirely easier, or conversely, to invalidate our own genuine pain because someone else appears to have it much worse. But pain is not a competitive sport. Suffering is entirely subjective and deeply personal. The weight of an anvil is incredibly heavy, regardless of whether someone else nearby is carrying two. Your struggles are completely valid simply because they are yours. You absolutely do not need to justify your pain to the outside world, nor do you need to minimize it to make others feel more comfortable. You only need to face it with brutal honesty, steadfast courage, and a very deep well of self-compassion. As we continuously navigate these profound challenges, we must learn to be fiercely protective of our own boundaries and our own vital energy. The long process of personal alchemy, of turning the heavy lead of suffering into the shining gold of wisdom, requires an immense amount of internal emotional resources. You simply cannot undertake this difficult journey if you are constantly depleting yourself to fulfill the unreasonable expectations of others, or if you are habitually engaging in toxic environments that actively erode your self-worth. Part of passing the true test of life is learning to say a quiet, firm, unapologetic no to absolutely anything that distracts you from your healing and your necessary growth. It is about actively creating a supportive environment around yourself that protects and nurtures the person you are so bravely trying to become. I want to speak directly to the specific part of you that feels incredibly exhausted right now. The part of you that is tired of constantly trying, tired of endlessly hoping, and deeply tired of fighting the invisible, draining battles in your own mind. It is completely natural and entirely okay to feel fatigued. True, lasting endurance is not about maintaining a constant, high-energy, manic sprint. It is about the quiet, determined refusal to permanently surrender. It is about allowing yourself to rest without guilt when you are weary, to weep openly when you are overwhelmed, and to seek quiet shelter when the storm is simply too fierce to stand in. But after the rest is taken and after the tears are shed, it is about standing back up, gently dusting off your soul, and taking just one more small, imperfect step forward into the unknown. You are actively participating in the great universal test of human existence. Every single time you consciously choose patience over reactive anger, every time you choose difficult forgiveness over easy resentment, and every time you choose to keep going when giving up would be so much easier and more comfortable, you are passing the test. You are participating in the quiet, unrecognized heroism of ordinary daily life. You may not receive a shiny medal for simply getting out of bed on a terrible day when grief threatens to completely drown you. The world may not stop to applaud when you finally manage to silence the inner critic and bravely choose to love yourself exactly as you are. But these quiet moments are the victories that truly matter in the grand scheme of your existence. These are the internal triumphs that painstakingly build an unshakable, beautiful soul. Transformation rarely announces itself with a gentle arrival. Often, the moments of greatest internal collapse, when the familiar path forward vanishes entirely and you are left standing in the ruins of your old certainty, are the exact conditions required for a genuine shift in your foundation. It is the intense, suffocating pressure of the dark cocoon that eventually transforms the caterpillar. Do not abandon yourself in the darkness. Stay present with the discomfort. Breathe deeply through the anxiety. Trust implicitly that the underlying architecture of your spirit is fundamentally strong enough to withstand the violent tremors of this current difficulty. You are far more capable, far more resilient, and far more deeply loved than your fearful, exhausted mind will currently allow you to believe. As we conclude our quiet time together today, I want you to take a deep, intentional breath. Feel the steady, quiet rhythm of your own heartbeat, a miraculous drum that has been keeping you alive through every single difficult moment you have ever faced in your entire life. You are still here, even through the days that felt completely unsurvivable. Some quiet, enduring part of you refused to let go. You have bravely navigated terrible storms that you genuinely thought would completely destroy you, and yet here you are, listening, seeking, and quietly growing stronger. The suffering you are currently experiencing is absolutely not a punishment for being flawed. It is the rigorous, sacred preparation for the extraordinary life you are meant to live. The truest measure of your strength is not found in the absence of your struggle, but in the quiet, unyielding grace with which you endure it. If this message brought you comfort or clarity today, please like this video, share it with someone who might be carrying a heavy burden in silence, and subscribe to Power in Words so we can continue walking this beautiful, challenging journey together.